So it's now been 4 years since I built my truck camper and a lot of things started to fall apart. My roof leaked, my battery system started to fall apart. The tie downs I used got fully clapped out. I put a window in upside down. My door and my floor even leaked. Let's just say I faced a lot of problems. When I originally built my truck camper, I had the big dreams of going skiing, parking in the most beautiful spots, going surfing, doing all the fun things. But nobody tells you how your camper is gonna wear and tear over 4 years and what it takes to fix it. But more importantly, what my grandpa would always say is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So how you could avoid those mistakes. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing when I started my build, and I started out with no experience. If I were to go back to the beginning of my build, I would definitely avoid these 5 main mistakes I made. And I got a lot of these, honestly. I can make many videos, but let's just start with these 5 here. Bruh. I'm not a scientist, but that's not how an eyebolt should look. And this side is even worse. Okay, so as you can see, these eye bolts are pretty clapped out, and these connect to my tie downs, which basically hold my camper to the truck or the bed. So I think you can understand why it's a pretty big mistake. And this already happened to my front 2 tie downs, the ones that hold the camper down in the front. These are just the back 2. I already replaced the front ones with these exact same bigger eye bolts, and they're holding up way better. So I needed to make the same change in the back. These original eye bolts were only rated for about 300 pounds, and these heavier duty ones are rated for closer to 600 pounds. This isn't the whole weight of the camper, it's just what torque would that one bolt be under. Now, when it comes to tying down your truck camper to the bed of your truck, I mess around with a lot of different variations. I won't go through every variation, but I now use 2 turnbuckles in the back, and I use 2 chains in the front, which have springs in them. These are nice and tight. Springs are loaded. Woo! Plug in some, mice deterrent. If you want to see how to build these chains, I'll put the link in the description. The best option for tie downs are mounting it to your actual frame. I didn't do that just because it's more expensive, and I like to take my camper on and off all the time. I'm more of a weekender, so this is fine for me. Tie downs are not like the fanciest thing on the camper. In fact, they're probably one of the last things you want to think about because they're not a part of the aesthetic. But nailing them is pretty critical because obviously you don't want your truck camper to fall off your bed. So if you're wondering what happens if you don't fully waterproof your truck camper and the roof leaks, don't worry, because I made that mistake and I'm still dealing with it. So here are a few things I've learned from making a roof that leaks. We decided to head out and go straight back home so that we could fix the problem. So last year, when I was driving down a really narrow logging road, I cranked a couple trees, and there's still some tree bark and debris. So now I have a roof that needs major waterproofing, and the little bit of caulking I did have in between the roof and the walls is now broken from hitting that tree. I've learned a lot of lessons of what not to do when it comes to waterproofing your truck camper. I actually got a comment the other day that the hardest part of building a truck camper is basically waterproofing it for 100 kilometers an hour down the highway. Looking back on my build, I'd probably say this is actually pretty true. So the first thing I'm going to say is you should overestimate on caulking. Every single time you drill into your roof or you put a hole into your roof, it better be for good reason, because it's very, very likely that it leaks. I do live in the Pacific Northwest, so we get hammered with rain. So if you're in a drier environment, you maybe don't need to take this as seriously. But in my opinion, you should try and make it as waterproof as possible. So if you take a look at these laps or where the steel siding overlaps each other, I did not put caulking here. I don't know why. I clearly made a mistake, but I'm now going back, cleaning them all up and adding a bunch of caulking. I think that's where the main source of my leaking is coming from. The water is crawling back up through those laps. The other thing is the roofing screws. I use roofing screws with a rubber gasket. The problem with these is they're actually supposed to be rated for a certain slope. I don't know what that slope is, but typically on like an A-frame or a cabin, you'd have a really steep roof wherever you use roofing screws like this. So for me, my roof is pretty much flat. And because I get puddling in between the bumps of the steel siding, if there's some screws there, you best believe water's seeping through those screws as it puddles up. The other main source of leaking from my roof is definitely where my roof vent is. Now, I highly recommend a roof vent because you basically need it to let out steam while you're cooking and just letting out any bad air that you might get in your camper. However, you need to go crazy with caulking. Like, I went back so many times over this roof vent and I just went ham. So basically what you're watching me do today is caulk up the roof vent, the overlaps of all the steel siding, and I'm even caulking over my roofing screws. I would just recommend you be hyper diligent when it comes to your roof because the less leaking, the better. All right, I know this is a skip. This was the first night in the camper after the caulking job. It literally rained all night, which is actually hilarious. It's just been like this nonstop and like no drops. I'm so stoked to finally figure out this waterproofing thing. Oh man, it's a huge relief. This is super annoying because when you sit down, it's like just not, you're like just, so I'm thinking slam it to the roof, 2 more inches of headroom. All right, so I know this seems random, but there's actually a point to be made here, and that's how valuable good seating in your camper is. So when I first built this camper, right below this cabinet, I actually had a magnetic bar, and the cabinet was too low. So you couldn't lean your back, and your head was crunched, so it made you slouch. And the problem is that this is the best seat in the house. This is right next to the wood stove. And for so long, I kind of just accepted it for what it was. But honestly, you realize how sweet it is to just have nice seating. The amount of times I have 3 or 4 people in the camper and we end up playing crib or just hanging out, having an extra seat or 2 or just maximizing good seating is a pro tip, I'm telling you. So don't cram your seating. This seat, oh man. This seat sucked for so long because this was too low. You were like, it sucked. And it's the best seat in the house, right next to the wood stoves. The camper's back in action, baby. Better tie downs than ever before. New electrical. We're going to be doing the trailer lights soon, and they ain't ready for it, man. They ain't ready for it. Now, the next main problem I'm facing is my electrical system, which honestly, it works, but it's just dated. Straight up dated. We're going for an all-new electrical system, so this puppy needs to go. When I say an all-new electrical system, I really just mean a new battery. I built this with an AGM battery, which is very heavy, but it was cheap, and that's why I went with it. I got it for $200. I actually have a whole video of what that electrical system is, so I'll link that in the description below. But really the first move is upgrading to a lithium power bank, which is the hottest trend lately, and you basically just have to go with one in any camper system today. Hey, yo! Finally got the new battery connected to my lights, so we can actually run off one battery. Yeah, I didn't really film this part, but I've been doing electrical all day. Electrical for me is pretty mind-numbing. I don't really like it. But yeah, basically got this little piece here off Amazon, and I just wired it up to my fuse box. Of course, it's going to get a little bit neater. Because I already had a fuse box going to all my light switches, I just wired the new battery directly to this fuse box. But if I were to begin again, I'd keep it really simple. Get a power bank. I got this Blue Eddy 1000 watt one because it's pretty heavy duty, and just plug everything right into the power bank. It's super simple because honestly electrical can be a headache, and I would just recommend not overcomplicating it. I even use this new battery to power the power tools to build a box for it. So now the Blue Eddy sits in a box that looks like this. Now my battery does sit close to the wood stove, but that's why I built the box as a heat shield, and I got a fire going to varnish it, and I did some temperature checks and the battery's safe. The other thing I really want to do electrical wise is get more lights, these marker lights out here. I'm gonna do the red ones though, and for brake lights and blinkers, but unfortunately with the way I wired everything, it's all tucked behind this, and with caulking and all this stuff and insulation, I think I'm gonna have to do the trailer lights, the wiring just on the outside. So it won't look as good, but I think it's necessary. Now this is a serious pro tip for the aesthetic of your camper, but trailer lights and brake lights honestly just look so good, and they're so easy to install. I wish going back to the beginning of my camper, I just installed them all from the start instead of having to go back and rewire things, because now you see I can't really tear up the foundation of my camper And I know it seems maybe not that necessary, but when you build a truck camper, you typically remove one brake light, which is the center back light. And where I live in the Pacific Northwest, when it gets cold and rainy, the roads get so dark. I want to be lit up like a Christmas tree. Like I want everyone to see me coming down the road. If I'm braking, if I'm turning, I want people to be aware, because you want to give big trucks and drivers just a lot of warning when you're slowing down, especially in the winter months where you need the reaction time, especially on big highways. So for me, I'm throwing up 2 more brake lights. These are gonna do the job. It just looks so clean. All you gotta do is wire them up in series, and really you can have a lot of fun with it, with how you wanna light up your camper, put some corner lights on it, and definitely get some brake and blinker lights on there because they just look so sweet. We basically started this video like a few months ago, like September, and I actually had an injury. I ruptured my eardrum. So I haven't been taking the camper out. Typically I'd be taking it out surfing a lot. So I just kind of took the time to reset on the camper and you know, kind of prepare for the winter. And the last 2 years I've been really away from skiing, which is what I grew up doing the most. Skiing, it's like probably the core activity in my identity. So really psyched this year to get back to skiing. And basically all the work I just did was to prepare the camper for Mount Baker. So a Mount Baker trip, hopefully lots of ski trips, and yeah, I'm gonna do my best to document it all. Really hard with a 9 to 5, but this is something I really want to do. So thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.